to D&D Beyond, and please welcome this incredible crew that we have gathered for, at least in my tenure, the first annual, I hope, D&D Beyond Pride Roundtable. Thank you for the air horns. I'm going to do quick intros and then have you fully introduce yourselves, but you know them from Dungeons & Dragons, A Darkened Wish, from all over the internet, as a streamer on Clear Skies Shield of Tomorrow Power Play. Please welcome Sam de Leve.
Hi, hello, greetings.
You know him from Rivals of Waterdeep, from his own amazing streams, from being a multi-talented and amazing contributor, and some great comic book opinions. I threw that one in myself, but you should know him for it. Please welcome Brian Gray.
Hello, hi.
You know them from Broadswords, from Power Play, from their brand new show, Tabletop Otaku. Please welcome B. Zelda.
Hello, hello.
And you know him from the original Broadway cast of Rent, from Star Trek Discovery, and possibly coming soon to a D&D table near you. I mean, I'm not ruling it out. Anthony Rapp, please welcome to D&D Beyond.
Hello. Thank you.
First off, how is everybody's Pride Month going?
Yeah, I'm in Toronto, Ontario, which is where we're shooting season 4 of Discovery, which is a lovely city. We just got some outdoor eating back, but it's been on total lockdown from October until now. So, you know, haven't been able to really enjoy the kind of atmosphere of like gathering safely that even would be possible in cities that are even a minor lockdown. So other than that, I mean, I've been doing, you know, some political things on Twitter. I've been trying to fight the TERFs on Twitter as part of my Pride Month. So that's one of the things I've been doing. But other than that, yeah, that's where I am. Yes.
And B. Zelda, where are you calling in from today?
Heck yes. So I'm also in Ontario, Canada, and I'm very excited that we can finally eat at patios now. Like, I have been locked in this house for what feels like an eternity, and to step outside and actually see people at tables again, it feels fake. It feels so fake.
Could be.
I am feeling very, very lucky in California that we also were able to get to a place where it might be safe to start resuming some of that stuff, but it's going to be a process. Brian Gray, where are you coming to us from today, and how's your Pride Month going?
It's going well. I'm in Washington, D.C., and Pride Month, our city just started announcing that things can open up again, so it is a bit odd. But all of the local venues have events. We've got a parade planned, which is going to be driven. So there won't be any actual walking groups. It'll be cars going through the city, which is very odd. And I recently was able to go to brunch for the first time since all this started. And it was like, you know, nature is healing itself because gays are returning to brunch.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I love it. Sam de Leve, how are you doing, and where are you calling in from?
Well, ostensibly I'm calling in from Los Angeles, but of course I am from within the internet void, as always was and always shall be. I'm just in here now. So, plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. My Pride Month involves, can I put rainbow on it? Yes. The answer is always yes. And in this, Pride Month is, in fact, very much like all of the other months of the year.
All right. I would love, first, before we get into the sort of meat of today's panel, I would love to know a little bit about yourself and what was your best or funniest character choice in a game. And I'm going to hit you up in opposite order. Sam de Leve.
They look
best
so ready.
Or funniest?
Oh, no. Oh, no. Gosh, I'm sure I will be plagued with recency bias here. But
So I say a good one, not the best one ever, you know.
Let's see. No, I can't first. I'm sorry.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
It was
I'm
unfair of me to
ready.
spring that on you. B. Zelda.
Go B.
Best or
Yeah.
funniest, and a little bit about yourself, if you would.
Oh, yeah. So, hey, what's up? My name is Zelda. I'm a non-binary they, them podcaster streamer. I play a butt ton of Dungeons & Dragons. Like, it's probably unhealthy, but as long as nobody tells me to stop, it's fine. And I just finished an 8-session campaign like 15 minutes ago. So I was crying by the end, and I didn't want any of my players to know because one of our players decided to, like, sacrifice himself so he can become like the dragon of the island. But most importantly, I played the laziest, least combative, least useful character who was honestly just antagonistic. At some point, I betrayed my team, and their name was Ruse, which felt very right because, you know, they pulled a bit of a ruse on them. I never helped with the ship. Combat was sketchy at best. I spent a lot of time leaving combat to go have a drink. And I just never had more fun not playing the game, you know?
That is an incredible, like, okay, D&D, of course, we all know is a game you can't win or lose, but truly that is one of the characters that is the most difficult to pull off, because to pull off a character like that with you and the whole table having a great time is like,
right.
Sam, help me with sports things, but it's like a very difficult basketball achievement. Like from quite far away. You know what I mean? That sort of thing.
Like the three-pointer? That's a word I know. Mm-hmm.
It comes in points?
I don't know.
So my hat is off to you, B, for pulling off the unhelpful character.
Thank you. And the best part was everybody had fun too. Like, even though I was antagonistic, we had safeties in check, we had post-game check-ins, so everybody was still having fun, and I got to make fun of everything they did. You know, it was great.
All right. Let's see, Brian. Do you have a best or funniest thing you've done, a character choice you've made that you would want to share, and a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Well, I'm Brian, aka Urban Bohemian, variety streamer on Twitch and on Rivals of Waterdeep every Sunday, mostly tweeting about a lot of nonsense and goofy videos. And I think the character I think of most recently, and again, I got the recency bias because I've been away from the hobby for a while, but coming back, I created a Tiefling Bard because I was wondering about new characters, and it was wonderful to find out that essentially LGBTQIA plus people have made Tiefling like the best thing ever to play ever. So I played a Tiefling Bard who, just because of my own personal thing, did a lot of talking and tried to always talk their way out of combat, which I feel like frustrates a lot of GMs who are so ready. Like, you left an entire room of rats alone. And I was like, well, they were just rats. Yeah, but it was easy XP. But they were rats. I mean, you know. And the best thing was when we did potions for charity, and one of our players had a potion of fire breathing, belched and blew like a door down, and my character had to lean in and pretend to basically be a door inspector. Like, we were just testing everything, nothing to see here, and just a room full of like orcs is staring at us like, eh? So that was fun.
The entire adventure
nice
hinged on it.
Oh. And here's where I need to come up with a door pun, and it is knob happening.
Oh, boy.
I'm fired, right? I'm fired.
Oh, gosh. Oh, wow. It gets worse. It has layers.
Anthony, would you tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe a particularly great or hilarious thing that one of your characters has done in a game?
Well, I'm an actor primarily, but I'm also have been a longtime nerd, and I try to champion things, you know, that are important to me, like reading and D&D. So I've returned to this beautiful hobby and game in the last year, and I've been lucky and happy enough to get invited to a lot of like cool charity one-shots and stuff. So in some ways, I've had so much fun coming up with all these different characters, but I feel like I didn't get to really live them. You know, I got to do them for a couple hours. But one that I had a lot of fun with was this kobold barbarian named Sput. Because just the idea of this little 2.5-foot critter who has this battle axe that's bigger than he is, who's like so ready to just pound on things. But I only got to do it in a one-shot. So it's like, maybe I'll bring him back sometime, you know what I mean? But just that was just really funny. I envisioned him like he was with his kobold crew in some dungeon somewhere, and he was like young, so he wasn't like part of the fight, but he saw the fight and he saw like this really amazing barbarian, and he was like, "That's what I'm gonna be," kind of thing. So like, I don't know, something about that really enjoyed. I did poutine with a couple of the folks here. This Tabaxi bard who's people probably either love him or hate him because he's like really obnoxious, But I don't
Named
know.
Poutine.
Mm-hmm. He's a kind of
That's a
kind of like
fabulous name.
like that. Hey, poutine, like that.
Oh my god.
Because I read in I can't remember. I think it's in wherever they talk about tabaxis, they say the tabaxis like to name themselves after objects or things that they love. So it's like, of course,
that's wonderful.
Poutine. So
That would be my name too if I lived by those rules.
Yeah.
That is actually just dipping into the naming conventions for each species to check, to look for inspiration is something that somehow will never get old for me. Like, I do it every time. Like, if I'm making a gnome and I've made 50 gnomes, I still go back and look, all right, how do gnome names work and which ones can I steal? Like, that's one of my favorite parts of the whole thing for some reason. Also, an
Nomenclature?
advantage for
Oh, wow.
Oh,
Sam
wow.
puns. They bring the big guns.
That one came out of nowhere. Love it.
I also
Gnomeware.
Oh.
I would have assumed it was no
Points-
man's land.
Oh my god, y'all are killing me.
Please, no more.
No more? Yeah.
advantage to TTRPGs over regular performance work is what I was going to say, is that you can make Spot's Adventure go on at a million different tables over time. And I know as performers, we don't always feel like we get to do that. So we will talk a little bit later about, like, what are some of the reasons that we gravitate specifically to TTRPGs, and that might be one of my faves. But Sam de Leve, will you tell us a little bit about yourself, aside from what the chat is learning, which is that you are very dangerous with words.
No one should trust me with scissors or the English language. These two things are dangerous. Yeah, so I am about, I suppose it's almost 5 years into playing the Dungeons and the Dragons. Some of my very, very first campaigns were with this Amy Dallen. Right here, did I point it? Yes, I did. And it has been spectacular. The best D&D memory that comes to mind at the moment was the time when I was a dragon, because that's totally a thing that you can do in some extended homebrews of Dungeons and Dragons. And at the 20th level dragon, if 20th level is broke, 20th level dragon has never known the concept of whole. And yet, in our party, there, as we were fighting the thing scaled for a party full of 20th level dragons, there was also a tiny human 10th level wizard. The squishiest being who had wandered in literally from another campaign. And naturally, in deciding that I protect this small thing, I elected to forego an evasion and take an entire meteor swarm to the face.
Yeah.
Wow.
I have nothing but respect for that. Gotta protect the babies.
Protect the little squishy wizard babies. Because someday
did
I
it
will be
go?
a wizard. Well, because that was a rogue, I hadn't taken any other damage that fight. So it was fine.
Wow.
I just took the meteor swarm entirely to the face.
Oh, but that's beautiful.
Spicy.
Like the rogue who chooses not to dodge at the right story moment. It's like the modern dance saying the unpointed foot is an action. You know, it really says
Exactly
a
what I
lot
was going
more.
for. Yeah.
I want to welcome in some folks who just came in from looks like a big raid from Cypher of Tyr, friend of several. Probably everyone here and everyone in the community. We love you. Thank you so much for that. All right. So we've covered this a little bit, but I do want to know, what is your D&D journey? If there's a brief version. And it is important to me that, like, there is no wrong answer to this question, because new people starting to play is the best thing, and it is fabulous. And as Sam alluded to earlier, I got to be there for some of the early days of Sam and TTRPGs meeting each other, which was one of the all-time great meetings between a person and an idea to ever happen. I can personally attest to that. So I'm just curious, my TTRPG journey is that I was very, very lucky. I got introduced to Dungeons & Dragons as a kid. I have been lucky enough to find people to play with on and off throughout all of the years since. I started with 2nd edition, which for anyone watching this who's very much new, they have changed the game over time. We are in now what is called 5th edition. It is great, and I love it the most of any D&D. That's just my personal opinion. No one is required to agree with me. But it has been a joy of my life to watch so many more people come in and join this party that we unfortunately felt like was a secret for a long time, that like it's so fun and no one knows. They don't know how fun it can be. And that I feel like has been the gift of the last couple of years, is watching so many people get to find that out. And now I've just been monologuing, but just for the sake of anybody watching, Sam, what was your D&D journey?
Yes, so I had a high school friend who attempted to introduce me to D&D 3.5 and 4, and was very into optimization, and anybody who knows me now will laugh, but I was deeply intimidated by that and noped right out. It wasn't until years and years and years later, because truly I am the Critical Role generation of role players, that I saw them do it, and I realized, oh, this isn't just for like computer science nerds. This is for theater kids. Oh, this is this is for me. This is more for me than anything has ever been for me, mine now. And then I just hyper-focused and never stopped.
And what Sam is alluding to is that they now have earned a well-earned reputation for being the person that you go to with all of your crunch questions, because it turns out their brain very much does work like that. Just to speak on your behalf as someone who's benefited.
A spoonful of roleplay helps the optimization go down, turns out.
Yes.
Zelda, what was your D&D journey?
Yeah, so kind of like Sam, I have not been playing tabletop games for an incredibly long time. I'm hitting 4 years in October. And the very first time I played Dungeons & Dragons was for my podcast, The Broadswords. So if you want to hurt your ears and listen to episode 1, I was using my microphone backwards. I didn't understand the system. I played a barbarian because they seemed simple, and then I picked the world's most boring path. Now, 4 years later, I still stubbornly didn't learn about how to play D&D until like January of this year. I have just been like pretending to know, and you can get by really well with only rolling 1 dice and being like, yeah, that seems right. That's a number. Does that work? No, it doesn't work. Let me give you a different number. So it's had a lot of ups and downs. You know,
you're joking, but that's a perfectly acceptable set of house rules as far as I'm concerned. If it works for your game, it works for your game.
Right? And I do that a lot on streams. So, you know, it is what it is. But I mean, at some point, especially with the Broadswords, I started to get into streaming, and then that world, I realized, like, I don't just have to speak about, like, how wonderful this character is and, like, do a voice. I could, like, act a little bit and, like, be as outrageous as I want, and I really, really fell in love with that. So D&D has been just, like, a wonderful experience, and you don't have to learn any rules to actually play the game.
And I know that we're focused on D&D today, but I believe, like, is that what led you to opening up the wider world of TTRPGs for you?
Oh, yes. I wanted a simpler system. I wanted to roll, like, 1 dice, you know?
And, of course, there are many wonderful games out there to sort of sample from and to lean into different flavors, and you can reflavor specific games, but I love the way that it can also function as a doorway. Just that thing that I was alluding to, I didn't know how fun this could be. That can lead to so many wonderful different kinds of experiments. And I'm so impressed by the amazing designers who work on all of them. And Anthony, what was your D&D journey?
So like you, it was Advanced Dungeons & Dragons. So I had those old books. But my friends and I, this was in junior high, we were so disorganized. We only ever maybe did 2 or 3 sessions. The rest of the time I would just read those books like I couldn't stop. And I rolled 1 million characters. So I hadn't played, I sat in on one friend's game once a few years ago, but I didn't really, I was just sort of watching. And then last year, during the pandemic, a friend of mine that we talked about D&D, maybe we should do it, but he lived in California, I live here. He's like, Zoom, we're doing a Zoom game. So that's how I started playing again. And of course I had to play a halfling rogue because that's what I well, then it was a thief back in the early 80s. But the interesting, there's so many things I do love about what's changed. And among them is that back then you were restricted in what you could be. There were all kinds of restrictions. So the fact that now there's no restrictions, I think is a fantastic thing. And I think that there's even more and more exciting conversations happening within the space about other kinds of isms and other kinds of, inherited ways of thinking about certain races. I would hope the next edition of the Player's Handbook would be even more, how they write about tieflings, for instance. It's a little, they need to, I think all of it really needs to be examined. Half orcs, everything. But so now I'm in 2 regular campaigns. I've been doing 1,000,000 one-shots, and I'm planning my first campaign that I would be a DM for, creating my own kind of thing too. So, and one of the things that I'm excited about in that, and maybe other people are doing this, and I invite the Player's Handbook folks to also consider something like this, is when I'm rolling for NPCs, if I just want to do some randomization stuff for them, I'm using a 6-sided die, and a 1 or 2 is male, 3 or 4 is female, and a 5 or 6 is non-binary. Just to encourage that as an introductory way of just embracing that in the wider universe to make it more normalized and a part of the world.
Make it part of your practice to consider those possibilities.
Yeah.
Okay. I love that. Brian, thanks. You're also a returning player, right?
Yeah. So, like Anthony, back in the days of the Big Red Book, advanced D&D, and played a few games, and didn't have the most supportive tables, didn't have the most supportive groups, and I honestly was just not that good at that. It was a lot of things to remember and a lot of math, and I just enjoyed getting out graph paper and making dungeons. So I did a lot of that. And then I just left the hobby behind for the longest time, and I got into other role-playing games. I'm bristling at that computer science nerd because I am a computer science nerd. I got into other role-playing games, but the fact is, I got into live action, and for then it was so this is rules supported acting. We can kind of have fun, we can do more, and in all of those games, the universes that we dreamed up were much more fun and inclusive, and didn't have any jerks telling us the way it should be or the way it's always been. So coming back, I was really nervous about coming back to D&D period. And then I started reading and I was like, oh, this is much easier to grasp. And in terms of ease, I mean accessibility. It's much more accessible to somebody who's just starting. And because we were doing streamed games, it was fun to embody the character. And it's you can really just kind of have that fun of, I'm getting to play D&D. We're kind of putting on a show. We're really, it's essentially like a 1 or 2 hour improv kind of sketch that we're all doing that's supported by a story. So I loved it.
All right. I would love to know, I love all of these stories, and I want to take all the hours in the world, but we don't actually have infinite time. We have about this hour. So I would love to know, have you seen D&D have a positive influence either for yourself or for others in the queer community? Is there anything that you've seen that... So, how has D&D positively influenced you or others in the queer community? First taker first. Sam, put you on the spot. B.
Oh.
B was first.
Anthony and I were ready. Anthony, go ahead.
Well, we in the Star Trek Discovery cast, we have a game going that there's only one cishet man in the crew, and he's our DM, but he's such an ally, it's ridiculous. But we have 2 NB players, and forgive me, they do use that term. I understand that term is not always loved by all people who are non-binary, so forgive me for that. Shorthand. And we have a bisexual player, and then my fiance Ken and I are in the game. But it is such a safe space in general, so that's a very immediate thing I can point to. One of our non-binary players is playing a boy. One of our non-binary players is playing a non-binary character. So it's just, I don't know, it provides safety and spaciousness to investigate and live inside of all kinds of realities. And I think over time, until it became more explicitly open in the general community. I think it has been that forever, a safe space for queer people.
People have used it this way since long before we, and I'm very glad we do, started to have textual things to support that. Is what I would be my take on that one. Yeah. B.
So to pull entirely from Anthony's answer, so like D&D, like role-playing as a character has been the best form of exploring your gender expression, gender identity. I've played so many games. I have played all kinds of characters, and that was quite honestly what led me to be very comfortable realizing that I'm a non-binary person, and like they, them pronouns were the ones that resonate with me. But I had to practice with a variety of characters before I'm like, okay, does this feel right? No. But does this feel right? And that was just such a wonderful experience to have that come out of Dungeons and Dragons,
Yes.
Sam, I saw some enthusiastic gesturing.
I mean, I would know fewer trans people who had not explored gender through a role-playing medium prior to coming out than I do like trans people who have. It has been so instrumental for so many people exploring gender, not only those who know that they are trans or gender nonconforming, but also people who don't know yet or aren't sure, to have a vehicle of gender exploration that does not require a declaration of personal identity as a vector to see how do those professional nouns hit ya? Does this feel good? No. How does this sit? And how do people react? And one of the great things about role-playing games is because of their social contract, the other players will be very accepting of a character very often who is a gender that like maybe is a gender you're interested in, and having that acceptance of a character at a table can often ultimately be a rehearsal for a lot of baby transes in particular. And it is analogous in a lot of ways with sexuality as well. It's a very good medium for identity exploration by having it just a little outside yourself. So
and I will say, Sam, I think we've actually talked about this on several occasions in real life, but long before I knew that this was a common thing, I am definitely counted among the folks who started making queer characters in games before I had any confidence or realization or admitting or like knowing that applied to me. So it's one of those like, didn't know I was doing it, but in retrospect, quite clear. Now, of course, that doesn't mean like that this exploration will mean the same thing for everybody, but I love that is one possibility that exists, and I think that's really gorgeous. Brian, have you seen a good effect for you or others in the community?
I think, I mean, for me especially, I was talking with a cast member of Rivals about it, and we were both talking about characters that we've had, and we were both like, I don't think we've ever had a character that wasn't queer, whether it was explicitly stated or not. And I thought about that going back, and just realizing that you have the freedom to create these worlds and be in these worlds without, like, you don't have to bake racism into your fantasy worlds. You don't have to bake these things into your setting. No homophobia, no transphobia. And also, even if the person sitting at the table is like cisgender heterosexual person, they are also kind of being exposed to these ideas, and they're realizing like, okay, this is just a part of the world. Like, I can now build new worlds without this. I don't have to draw all these weird legacies. I don't have to draw all the stigmas and the stereotypes of how races and species are treated in D&D. I don't have to have any of that. So I think it's been a positive effect but I have to tack on to what everyone said, like gaming, video gaming, tabletop gaming. I have seen more friends who have been able to use it to explore their gender identity, their sexuality. It's just been a place where it's like, let me see if this person that I feel I am, let me actually see if I can slip into their shoes for an hour and see how that feels. And it's I think it's amazing.
I have a sort of general question to everybody, especially, and forgive me, I don't know if you guys identify as trans non-binary or non-binary, because my understanding is that there's some distinction there. But for people who are themselves not trans or non-binary, playing a gender that they are like cishet white dudes who play a woman or vice versa, is there anything about that makes you uncomfortable, or do you think is cool, or like what would your sense of the kind of boundaries be there? Do you know what I mean? Is that making any sense?
Do you mean in public games, private games, or like in general?
Either, all, any, yeah. So public, certainly, since it's becoming so much more public, Does that ever give you any concern, or is it, I don't know, is it?
For me, I do try to remember, even if someone isn't necessarily declaring a public identity, as I was just talking about as an exploratory platform, just because someone is currently putting themselves forth from a certain identity doesn't mean that they are not themselves using this as an opportunity to explore their gender. They might be closeted, they might be an egg. And if you are if you are confident in your identity as le cis, I think it's a lot like playing any other marginalization respectfully, which it tends to be playing an identity but not telling stories about that because it's not your house. Do you want to tag on?
I mean, there's something I could add to this a little bit. It's just like folks in that position, like, so I identify as trans non-binary. So like, I am imagining what I think cis folks, there's a lot of gender empathy and empathy about like various sexualities to kind of sit into a seat that you've never been in before and be like, okay, this isn't so bad. Like, I can see why you are this way and you enjoy these things. So it creates a lot of empathy, which I think we all as human beings need a whole lot more of.
Yeah, it's because I think I look at it a little bit through the lens of being, in show business, and we're having such a needed conversation about who can play what roles and who can be cast as what roles. I grew up in the early 80s. I was in a production of The King and I, in which there were Caucasian actors playing Asian roles with Asian makeup. And there were Asian actors also, but that is something that would never happen now, And it's only very recently that we really started saying that only trans actors should be cast as trans roles, and that's become like now. I think there's a real strong floor there. Then I think of like roles like Mrs. Doubtfire. It's not a trans character, but it kind of talks about like these are the things that are getting really examined. And I think that does extend a little bit into this space of, how appropriate or not, or is it okay to explore these things even if you're not, if it's not connected. Since it is about, so much of what we do is about representation and identity, storytelling, and shining a light and everything like that. So are there lines and, I don't know. It's something that seems worthy continuing to think about.
Right?
I don't know. I definitely tack on to what B said. It's about treating it respectfully, and I think I have been at tables with players who are literally just like, well, I just wanted to put on this skin for a while, and they do not respect it. I've been with players who use horrible stereotypical tropes in their characters, and it's like, okay, now it's like everyone disliked that. So I feel like if someone is actually coming to this and, they're checking in with the GM if it's okay, they're checking in with other players if this is something they're okay with, and they're doing the work to make sure that this is something that they're treating with respect. They're not just like, just poking at it to see how it fits. I think that helps. Because there are definitely a lot of conversations like, okay, well, are you saying I can't play this character? And it's no, but also sometimes that person needs to examine, well, why is it so important for you to get this concept and stick to this concept? And how do you not see how others at your table might find a few issues with your decisions?
It's interesting.
I love that. My personal take on some of this, which being extremely cis only is relevant to some of this. And I do have to laugh because it's one of those like, when did I know I was cis? And it might have been when I was looking back being like, I think I've only ever played women. Have I ever made apparently that one I figured out real early. But the issue of playing with marginalization, the one reason I wanted to ask whether we were talking about public and private is that I think a lot of really important conversations are happening all at once, and some of them are about who has access to the resources to tell broadly accessible and well-supported stories that might get money or attention. And some of the questions that flow from that might be different from what is acceptable to play with your imagination and your heart at your home table. But of course, as Brian alluded to, I think the key, even in those just in the privacy of your own home things, you still want to check in with the people at your table. You still want to figure out what's right for your table. Whether your table wants to play with marginalization in your fictional world and sort of play out overcoming it, or wants to play without marginalization because it's, some infinite diversity and infinite combinations has some real appeal as an idea. I'm not saying anyone here would be a fan of that, but those are my kind of.
I see what you did there.
All those conversations kind of have to happen at once. So I really love hearing from all of you on sort of which things are standing out about it. And would love to have 10,000 more hours for this. But do you, speaking of this, have any advice for DMs and other players who value playing at inclusive tables about how to make that happen? How can you support new folks who might be wanting to come in, or how would you look to be supported?
Get a questionnaire going that allows anonymity and safety and individual responses to questions. That's one thing that was advised to me, and it was really great. Like, my friends that are going to play in my game, like, there's real safety among us, and at the same time, it just was that extra chance to have anything be addressed in a personal way. So I would say that's a really important thing, and to get a sense of what they're interested too. Some people love body horror, some people don't. Some people some people want to play all the games, like all the card games. Some people want not at all. Some people want to fight a lot of monsters. Some people want romance or not, in their games. So I think it's so important to get a sense of that. I've never experienced this myself. I've heard really creepy, weird stories about lines getting crossed between players who were
I
feeling
can tell you stories.
Hit on, and
definitely.
that seems bananas to me. But so yeah, hopefully you have a good relationship with your DM or GM to be able to go privately. We need to address this. It's all about safety, and certainly never feel like you have to have something shoved in your face that you don't want to have shoved in your face.
I kind of want to convene this entire panel at a later time for the After Dark and Horror Stories version of it. But we've seen some things, I think. But I am curious, let's see. I want to circle back to this. Please add your tips in as we go forward, but I did skip a couple, which is most importantly, what advice do you have for new LGBTQIA players who might be considering trying the hobby? Mine would be, don't be scared off by me saying we all have horror stories, because it won't necessarily happen to you. And I'm sorry I put that in your brain. There is, especially in 2021, a very good chance you're going to have great experiences, especially with steps like safety tools in place. Anyway, I'm not making false promises. I can't make every table good, but I can try. Advice for new players? Anybody got big ones?
Yeah, I have a two-tone answer to both of those questions that have been addressed. So first off, safety tools, wildly important. I heckin' love it. I'm releasing a blog post with Roll20 in a couple of days. So basically, I have outlined a document that is form fillable. It is anonymous, and there's sections for romance. There's what the expectations for the game is. There's what the tone is going to be. And there's a section for players to add any input. And that is just a wonderful way to get everybody on the same page right at the beginning. However, if you are a brand new little bean and you're like, hey, TTRPGs are cool, I've seen all these streams, I've listened to all these podcasts, how do I do this? I have received a handful of messages, actually not too recently, just folks saying I think this person wants to get into the scene, how can you help them? And my consistent response has been, there are a variety of tabletop communities that exist. Discord spaces, Twitter communities. What are you looking for? And I can point you in that direction. So like if y'all have any spaces that you're looking for, I can probably point you, because this world, this community that we've created is incredibly vast and diverse. And depending on what your needs are, if you are super into body horror, Vampire the Masquerade, there's a community for that. We can find it and we will send you there. And of course, that comes with its own challenges. Like, is that Discord community safe? Is it good? But there are steps to these processes. But as a beginning, that is probably the best thing that I would suggest to little newbies.
I love that. My coworker Michael has talked about seeking out online, local organizations of LGBT-friendly board gaming groups and things. It was an important step for him finding some good tables. And they may exist near you. It is worth checking. And now that we're all online, they all exist near you. It's just a matter of finding them.
One more thing to add.
Sorry.
Yeah, B.
One more thing to add. So I've worked for 2 companies that run games online for players. So like I recently ran Avatar the RPG, Avatar the Last Airbender. So heckin' good. So good. And it's just like through Magpie Games. You pay a fee and then you show up to my game and I regale you with this wonderful story for 4 hours. And that's also very accessible for folks who might not have the friends or the space to kind of start this.
Cool. This might anger the optimization guru down in the corner of our screen, but
I've put you on the spot, Sam. You're too good.
But I would say it's, like one of my friends who's going to join my game has never played before, and he's a little overwhelmed, and he's like very concerned about like doing the right things. So I would say, do not worry about doing the right things. Get interested in what interests you, and the rest will come, and you can learn the stuff as much or as little as you want to learn it. But yeah, like if you read about that, like that little gnome over there or that elf or whatever it is, just get interested. And anything can be optimized. Anything can be great. Anything can work. Any version of anything. So, and I will help you optimize too.
I talk about optimizing toward story. Mechanics are just there to facilitate telling the stories you want to tell, so that when you have that really smooth scoundrel son of a bitch, when the time comes to roll, that roll is backing you up. And honestly, I got into optimization as a little baby newbie because I was scared that maybe I wouldn't be able to do my part. So I looked at these guides that would help me build a character so that like I didn't worry that I wouldn't do a good enough job and then all my friends wouldn't like me. But you can go in with tools and guides, and gosh, D&D has a lot of that. If like being super prepared is the thing that like helps your anxiety. Or, right, as I often go in when I'm meeting a brand new gaming system, throw myself on the mercy of my GM and a pre-generated character and just see how it feels. And both of those are good because we have this super vast, diverse community, and because D&D and tools like D&D Beyond are so extensive. There are so many resources available for you. But toward my tip, it would probably be, no, it's okay. You really can go that big. Because I think so many people who get into this hobby have in their heart the big role-playing, big story desires, and might first come to the table worried about looking silly, and bring the quieter version of that. And I'm here to tell you that this community strongly reinforces going as big as you want to. That is our culture. And I mean, heck, if that ain't queer culture, just like bigger, louder, more. And it was the thing that attracted me to this. Okay, cool. I can just role play and act as hard as I want, and this community will embrace that. You can do it. I promise. You can be all of you. You are not too much.
I love it.
Ryan, do you have any tips for folks who might be new and either nervous or just not sure where to start about getting in or back in?
Yeah, Sam is very hard to follow. I'm just going to say. That enthusiasm is like, whoa.
I should have warned you all. I'm sorry. I always key into, don't be afraid to, like there are tons of resources out there. One of my favorite is the pre-generated characters, or simply look for a basic character concept
out there. There are tons of people who have written tons of guides, threads, blog posts, and yeah, like D&D Beyond makes that super easy because yes, you can read every little detail, or you can just click, 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 click. Okay, I've got a character. And don't feel that if you've watched a stream show, no matter what the audience size, no matter how popular it is, don't feel like you have to be that at the table. It's perfectly okay if you play your character by reading the sheet and making the rolls. And you don't always have to, like, you don't have to be charismatic to play a charismatic character. You don't have to sing to be a bard. You don't have to do those things at a table. You can just have fun and realize that it's, generally it's a group of people, hopefully friends, hopefully friendly, that are all playing a game together. You're all building this together, so it's okay to ask a question. No one should be, I won't say nobody will be, but nobody should be annoyed by the fact that you don't know everything, because there's a lot to know. There is a lot to know. So but yeah, I would say just, don't be afraid to dive on in. But also, yeah, don't feel like you have to build the perfect character the minute you come out the gate, because everything is a journey. You play something, you might not like it, or you may say, oh, here's a twist I never thought of, and you build on it. But I think, yeah.
I love that. I personally love running pre-generated characters. It's a great way to try something new, and it does take off some of this feeling of like, all right, will I do it? Do I want to spend time learning how this one works before I practice seeing if I like the way it feels? Because the truth is, if I fall in love with it, I am probably going to end up wanting to do a deep dive and understand what all the other paths were like. But you don't have to do it in that order. It's just an option that's available to you if you decide later that you really want to sink your teeth into that. And it speaks to that impulse that Anthony, you described what I think is, especially for like 90s kids, it was like a classic RPG experience, was just getting the books and looking at them and thinking about how much fun it would be to have a table to play them with, which is its own legit RPG experience. It just, I love that we are now living in a world where it's just much easier than it was then to make it from that to the next step if you want to be at that second step. It's just other options. If that's the fun part, playing around with the details, then that's available to you. If the big acting is the fun part, then that's available to you. If the challenge of meeting those mechanical needs is the fun part, that's available to you. And sometimes you're at a table with one of each of those and it somehow works, and that's its own magic. I don't know. But oh my gosh. Okay. What do you hope for in the future for the D&D community? As we wrap towards the end of our Pride Roundtable, which, by the way, I'm so grateful each of you joined me for. You are incredible panelists, and I certainly would love to extend this for 100 years. But I don't think I'm allowed to do that. So what do you hope for in the future for this community, and maybe final thoughts for newbies watching this who might be like, maybe it is for me? Brian?
It's happening so much of like the diversity and the inclusive nature and the really important conversations about representation. I think it's happening certainly on the community level in a big way in my experience, but I'd love for it to be that much more officially stated in the texts as published by Wizards. Like that would be.
I do love tiny changes like Van Richten's having a section on body horror that included in the text, watch out because sometimes stories like this can end up using ableist tropes. Avoid that. Mm-hmm. It meant a lot to me to see that. That's a subject for a different roundtable. Sorry, although obviously never not relevant to people's lives. I'm getting used to it. I asked you 6 questions and then I burst in and answered myself. I'm so sorry. Brian, final thoughts and what you hope for.
I kind of tack onto that. I like that they are better examining things as they're releasing new material, and I hope that they basically keep an eye toward that in the future. And perhaps they can go over some past printed missteps and make those corrections, make those changes, and call out those tropes. But I guess mainly everybody who wants to get into this hobby, who has ever felt like they were not welcomed in this hobby, which I did for many years. I hope that everybody out there who wants to get into a game gets into a game, whether you see somebody on Twitter running something or watching something, or somebody in your Discord says, hey, let's throw a game together. I just hope that you feel the freedom and fun of this hobby, because it really is a lot of fun. I still play every week, and I still ask questions in the middle of things because I kind of got too into acting my character, and I'm like, oh wait, how does that work? Right. And then somebody at the table tells me, and it's all good. So I think that, yeah, anybody out there who's watching, and if you want to get into the hobby, just try, ask a friend, check with your groups and see, because I think that there is definitely room in this hobby for everyone to have fun.
Now, Sam, you have to follow that. I'm going to turn it around on you.
See, it's difficult no matter the direction. Nonetheless, it's perhaps a little almost empty, but I just hope for more of so many of the good things that queer D&D is already bringing. One of the lovely things about it is not only that it facilitates social queer connections in ways that we often didn't have as a culture. Like this is a method of gathering for the introverts now. And that's very special and that's very important. But it is also a democratized storytelling platform that allows for a wealth of queer representation that, even as mainstream TV film improves, has not yet reached the level of that gayness we're getting to in D&D. That there is just such a, not just a surplus of these characters and these stories and just gender everywhere. But
sometimes no gender.
And sometimes 404 gender not found. But that because there are so many different players playing so many different characters and different experiences, that this is a great place. Like, even if you don't want to play at a table yourself, the queer stories that are happening in this space are ones that you can't find anywhere else, and maybe that thing that your heart was longing for, that a script has never quite captured, is going to be out there, and it may well be in D&D.
Yeah, I'm really glad I'm about to follow that. Okay, see.
Brian.
B is
are you volunteering?
I'm going to provide a nice, short and sweet answer. D&D is for everybody. If you are playing in offline games, have the most fun possible. But if you are playing in a public game, I urge you to understand that representation is wildly important. If you are providing a service in public where others are going to see you, please provide representation. And I still amend that with D&D is for everyone, but public and private spaces do need to be handled just slightly different.
It's a good thing to be thoughtful about. Yeah, thank you. That's a great tip. Consider all of those elements. When we're gamers, we like to think about multiple systems at the same time, right? We just have to actually apply that sometimes. Anthony, final thoughts, advice for folks on what you hope for?
I mean, I just think I think it touches a little bit on what Sam was pointing to, that it's, storytelling is metaphor, and it's such an opportunity to work out stuff in a metaphorical space and to create safety to do that. And I would, it's a great game. If you just like games, that's cool. The great surprise of it to me in so many ways is how deep it can go into looking at your own heart and soul and our own experience of the world, and a way to remake a world, or if your DM has created a world that has challenges, to get to try out how do you face those challenges as a way to practice that. So just lean into the beautiful metaphor of it, and the imagination it's not just escapism. It's a way that can double back and help you grow as a human being too.
Thank you all so much for joining me for the first inaugural D&D Beyond Pride Roundtable, at least from the time that I've been here. And it has meant so much. Where can the people find you if they want to see more of you gaming, hear more of your ideas, or just follow your excellent adventures? Anthony?
On Twitter, I'm at albinokid, and on Instagram, it's at albinokid1026. And I thought about maybe Twitch streaming. I have great respect for those who do. I just want to be private when I do it. So like a couple times I did it, I was like, I wasn't talking. I was just playing anyway. So I don't do Twitch yet. Maybe someday. Who knows? That's basically
Zelda.
Come fight the turfs with me on Twitter right now. Sorry. Yes.
Please do. Yeah, do that.
Hello. It is I, your non-binary busy bee. You can find me on Twitter as @B_Zelda. I am a podcaster. I am in 3 to 4 podcasts. I don't know. I'm also a Twitch streamer, and I am on, 5 to 6 shows. You'll have to follow me on Twitter to find out what I do.
Sam de Leve, where can the people find you?
Oh, you'll never be able to find me. My stealth check is far too high. But if you took expertise in your perception, you would be able to locate me on Twitter at Tchaikovsky, ChaiKovsky, and on Twitch, where you can get the full schedule of all of the places I pop out groundhog-like on the internet. That schedule is on my personal about page at twitch.tv/Delevely, DELEVELY.
And Brian Gray, where can people follow your adventures?
You can pretty much find me everywhere on the internet as Urban Bohemian. Very loud and vocal on Twitter about music and food opinions. Also twitch.tv/Urban Bohemian. And then every Sunday playing D&D on Rivals of Waterdeep, twitch.tv/Rivals of Waterdeep. We're in our 10th season, and our GM is putting us through the ringer. It's great.
Congrats, by the way, on joining the regular cast of Rivals.
Thank you.
And while we are in Pride Month, also, please keep supporting some of the amazing causes like Lambert House. My t-shirt isn't here yet for this year, but it's on its way. I love that Wizards teams up with that great cause most years to put some good money in that direction, support the Trevor Project, support all kinds of good causes this time and at all times, because every day is Pride Month in our hearts. But I also like actual Pride Month. Thank you so much. This has been such a pleasure. I am Amy Dallen, and we will see you next time on D&D Beyond.
It's D&D.